Hello, hello. Welcome back to the podcast. I am so excited for you guys to learn from our guest today, Justin Moore. Justin, welcome to the show.
Lindsay, I'm so thrilled to be here. We're going to have a blast today.
Yeah. Okay. So if you have been living under a rock the past few months and are like, who is Justin Moore? I feel like I have heard you, Justin, speak several different times, but for the new people in the room who do not know who you are, give us a little, I like to do the origin story. How did you become to do what you're doing? Fill us in a little bit.
All right, so I got to give all the credit to my wife, Lindsay, because it was not me. My wife actually started her first YouTube channel in 2009, if you can believe it. So way back in the day, you really couldn't make money on YouTube back in the day. You know, the partner program was just starting. And so it very much was a hobby for her. In the beginning, she was talking about beauty and skincare and cosmetics and things like that. And I was in medical devices, so the opposite of being a creator or being an influencer or whatever. And so what happened was, she started to make content. I was very much kind of just helping her out behind the scenes, and brands started reaching out, but it wasn't, hey, we'll pay you. It was, hey, we'll give you some free stuff, right? And so in the beginning, that was so exciting to her and us, because it was we were in our early 20s, no money. And so oh, free hair curler, free makeup palettes, send them over, let's go. And it was that way for years, Lindsay. It wasn't we wised up after a month. It was just oh no, and so essentially what happened is, by 2010, I started going back to school. I went back to school to get my MBA at night after work. And I started taking these classes around, advertising and marketing and negotiation and stuff. And just the gears started turning, and I would just see all of these comments on all of April's videos oh, I've never heard of this brand. Thanks for telling me about it. Or just went to the store and picked it up. And I just said to April one day, I was like, I feel like we're getting the short end of the stick here. You're a free $30 bag of potato chips. I just don't know if it's cutting it. And so I said, the next brand that reaches out, ask if they have a collaboration budget, to pay us, to pay you to talk about them. And she's like, there's no way anyone's ever going to pay me money. I was like, come on, just try it. And so sure enough, next brand reaches out. Hey, do you have a budget to work with me? And the brand said, oh yeah, sure. If you can talk about us in 2 videos a month, we will pay you $700 monthly. And our minds were blown, because we had only ever been used to kind of 9 to 5 income. You make the same amount of money every 2 weeks or whatever it is. And this is the very first time in our lives where it was wow, there's ways to make money in this world that are kind of uncapped. There's no ceilings. And so our instant thought was how can we find 10 more brands just like this? And so this led us down the road of over the last 10 or 15 years doing over 550 sponsorships, made over $5 million doing it. So it was our primary revenue stream as creators. And we can get into kind of what happened, because I ultimately decided to start an influencer marketing agency to get deals for other creators, and that led down a whole other journey.
Yeah. So, okay, I've been holding this here. So Justin just, oh my gosh, wrote? I was going to say sponsored, and I'm like, that is not the right word. Justin just wrote and published, and you can just now get it. I had it on pre-order, so I got it when it first came out. But Sponsor Magnet, how to attract, price, and execute your dream brand partnerships. First of all, Justin, I want to tell you, this is probably it probably needed to be called the only guidebook you ever need to buy on sponsorships, because this is something that has been this mystery to me. What's the best way to go about it, and how do you price, and how do you handle the objections? Or you say, a lot of brands will reach out and they want to give you free product, and okay, well, that doesn't pay the bills, and so how to transition that conversation. So I just want to tell, and I'm sure we're going to talk about your book pretty much this whole conversation, but I just want to tell everyone that they need to go get this right now, because just reading through it, I'm this is going to be literally a guidebook to pull up and reference scripts and all of those things. So how did you decide, first of all, to write this, that this was the best way to get this information out? Because I know you have the agency, but give us a little behind the scenes of when you were finally okay, I'm going to give this a book that's low cost for everyone to do this right.
Wow. Okay. So first of all, I actually ended up shutting down the agency. So I ran the agency for about 7 years, and COVID actually crushed the business. That's a whole other story. Where I do a whole episode on that, because that was really one of the lowest points of my life. But basically, it led me to start educating creators around the process, because I realized when I was in this really low place after the agency failed that I was I've got this kind of interesting perspective now, where I've been a creator for many years doing deals, but also now I've been on the other side of it, where I've been getting deals for other creators, where I was in the boardrooms with these big brands, and they were hey, we don't want to just pay you, April and Justin, like 5K, 10K over here. We want to spend $1 million across like 200 creators. Like, tell us what we should do. What platform should we be on? What people should we work with? And so it just afforded me a very different perspective. They also would say, hey, don't ever send us that person's profile again, because we're never going to work with them for the following reasons. And they would never say that to the creator, but like, I was like, oh, wow, I didn't realize that the brand had that sensitivity to that specific thing, like to someone swearing in their content, or it being risque, the thumbnails, or like these things that, again, they would never say to the creator. And so I was like, you know what? Maybe this is actually kind of interesting to start making some YouTube videos about, you know, how should you behave on a phone call with a brand? How do you negotiate? How do you price yourself? This type of thing. And so over the last 4 or 5 years, as you mentioned, I've been kind of educating creators around the process. And my first thought was like YouTube videos, right? That was like, okay, this is great. This is how I learn. I'm going to watch a YouTube video to learn how to do this. And so that was what I started with. And then what happened was someone was like, hey, you've got these great frameworks. I would love to read more about this. So I was like, okay, let me take the transcripts and put it into a blog. And then someone said, well, I would love to get these delivered to my inbox. And I was like, okay, let me start a newsletter, right? And then someone said, oh, I would love to like listen to your live streams on my commute. And so I said, okay, let me start a podcast, right? And so it was just this kind of slow transition to just like build out content formats, because I realized that people have different learning styles, right? And so what I ultimately decided was like, you know, a really big way that people learn is reading books, you know? And so I had this fear though, candidly, Lindsay, about writing the book, because like you said, you know, I have a business, I have full-time employees. And so it's like the main way I'm making money right now is I have a course called Brand Deal Wizard, and I have a coaching program. And so, you know, I had this fear that like, if I write a book, I'm kind of like open sourcing everything that I know. Like, why will people hire me? Why will people join my course and things like that? And so it held me back for a while. But one of my best friends, Jay Klaus, said this thing that always stuck with me, which was that like, information wants to be free generally. And so I just had this banging around in my head that like, I just got to do it. I got to like, my true North Star is like educating the next generation of creators to like help them avoid the mistakes that we made like coming up. And so I just decided, you know what, it's probably going to cause some havoc in my own business, but if I can, like, let's be real. At the end of the day, hopefully the goal is like a lot of people, you'll read this book, you won't need anything else. You never have to hire me, never have to take my courses, whatever. But there might be a fraction of those people who read it and think, okay, I know all this, but I just got this email from a brand and I just don't know what to do. I don't know how much to charge, you know, and then perhaps they'll, you know, ask our team for some more detailed support. But that was the philosophy. It's a thesis though. The book's been out 2 weeks, so I don't know if this is going to prove out to be true, but fingers crossed.
Yeah. And I think it will, because we hear that a lot in the coaching industry in general, you know, about not holding back that content, that information, like you were saying, and people will still want to work with you and your team one-on-one, because there's always like that one-off question, like, okay, so how does this pertain to me? Or what would you do in this case, in this instance, you know, which the book actually does a really great job, I think, of that anyway, because you gave different scenarios for lots of different things. Like, okay, what if they say this and then you do that? It's almost like I need like, and you talk about your roadmap in here, but like an actual like map of it out, you know what I mean? So that I can like follow a lot, like a chart, like a flow chart on what to do. But okay, so let's dive in a little bit to your method and your strategy that you were talking about in Sponsor Magnet. So someone's listening to this and they're like completely brand new, or maybe they were like me and I'm like, okay, you're talking to me in this book, who have been DMing brands and I'm like, they're not responding. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's such a rookie. So I'm like diving into that. I'm like, okay, I did that wrong. I did that, you know, like learning all these things. So talk to the rookie person, or maybe not even the rookie, but like, let's walk through a little bit about this strategy and what people can do to start getting these brand sponsorships.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think let's just, if it's okay, if you could like volunteer yourself as tribute, let's talk about the DM situation here, right? About like why sliding in a brand's DM is not very useful. So the first comment I'll make is that for almost all brands, especially if they're mid-size or larger brands, the person who is on the receiving end of that DM is probably like a community manager. They are someone who is, you know, it's the Chipotle community manager and someone's in their DMs mad about a lukewarm burrito. And so they're like, here's a $5 coupon, right? And so this is not someone who's in charge of like compensated partnerships, right? Maybe if the brand is small, then yeah, maybe the social media manager, that's the person. But for most brands of any scale, either they have a community engagement person who's handling that, or they have actually outsourced community management to an outside agency. And so if you do luck out and get a response from someone, it's almost always like, oh, we'll pass it along. If we're interested, we'll get back to you, this type of thing. And then it goes into the, graveyard and you'll never hear back from anyone. And so my sincere advice in these situations is don't DM brands on social media. It's actually way more effective to actually do some research using platforms like LinkedIn, for example, to start understanding the marketing hierarchy at the brand and realizing that depending on the size of the brand, who you target, the types of job titles that you target should change, right? And so I mentioned like a smaller brand, let's say it's less than 15 employees. There's probably only one marketing person in that company, and the director of marketing, that's probably your person. That's probably the person who's going to be the one you want to reach out to because they're handling everything. They're doing the Facebook ads, and maybe they're running ads in the local penny saver. And if they're working with creators, that's probably going to be the person, right? Mm-hmm. However, as companies get larger, now they have multiple people on their marketing team. Probably they have maybe they have a manager, someone lower who's like a coordinator, maybe they have an associate manager, maybe then maybe a director, right? And then you start getting larger, maybe over 100 employees at the company. Now you have directors, you have VPs of marketing, you have different marketing competencies like digital marketing, influencer marketing, right? And especially if you get really large, now, like I mentioned, they might have an agency, an advertising or a PR agency to handle a lot of this stuff. And so this is one of the things I talk about in the first chapter of the book. And in fact, I have an entire chart on page 69 of the book called the Job Title Targeting Matrix. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you can freeze frame this, but I have these charts where I was like, okay, depending on, here's the types of titles to target and here's the types of titles to avoid. And I think it's just so worthwhile to educate yourself about this stuff because, I think what happens, Lindsay, is that people, they slide in the DMs, they say something uninteresting, and then they don't hear back, and they're like, pitching doesn't work. And it's like, well, like you didn't send it to the right person, and you said something super boring. So, and so my philosophy is like, you got to learn both who to send it to and what to say. And maybe we can dive into what to say as well.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking too, because another big aha for me with the pitching was not to make it about you, because I always feel like, and I receive pitches like this all the time to be like on the podcast, for example, and it's like all these accolades and it's like all the trophies out. And so I just kind of assumed like that was what you were supposed to do. Although I know when I read those, I'm like, oh my gosh, I roll, like, so it's exactly it. And and I'm like, I just thought, like, I kind of knew it wasn't probably the way to go about it, but, that's what people teach too. And I loved the examples you gave in here. So maybe you just share for the people who haven't read the book a little bit. What are some do's with pitching and some don'ts?
Yeah, so we talked about kind of who to target and who to send it to, but let's talk about the meat. What do you actually say when you reach out to a brand? And so I have this pitching framework that I teach in the book called the ROPE method, so ROPE. So your pitch has to be R, relevant to a campaign that the brand is either currently running or has run in the past. O stands for organic, meaning that you can tie your pitch back to organic work that you've already published that illustrates that your audience has an affinity for their brand or their product. P stands for proof, so you can illustrate how you've helped other brands achieve results. And E stands for easy to execute, when they say, yeah, this is kind of interesting. What did you have in mind? And so maybe we should do a concrete example for you, Lindsay. Should we do a real case study? Would that be fun?
Yeah, let's do it. Sure.
Okay. All right. So throw out some like dream brands that you would love to, potentially collaborate with on the pod.
Okay, I'll send you one I'll tell you one that I DM, slid in their DMs, okay. They didn't respond. the drink Recess. Have you heard of it before?
Yeah, it's like the CBD type.
Yeah,
is that right?
Yeah, like the adaptogen.
THC type thing.
Mm-hmm. Right. And it's supposed to calm you down, and then they have like non-alcohol, like mocktails, that sort of thing. Because I'm hosting a live event, an in-person event for women entrepreneurs, and I thought that would really be fun for our like happy hour networking time at night.
Sweet. Okay, and what did you say to them in the pitch?
This is so bad. I'm so embarrassed.
It's okay. It's okay.
I think it was like 2 sentences in a DM. Okay. And I was just like, hi, I'm hosting this event for women entrepreneurs in Ohio in June. I really love your products. And I think we would love to have you as a sponsor for our happy hour. And I didn't hear anything back.
All right. So first of all, let's just take a pause here and acknowledge This is exactly the type of pitches I used to send. So this is normal because we're not taught this stuff, right? Like this is just, this is a very normal thing. So I appreciate you being vulnerable there because it just seems like, yeah, this is kind of what you should do. But now that we have our ego in check a bit, we have some humility, we realize like, what does that sound like? It's like, me. I have an event. Yes. I doing this. Will you give me something? Like, here's my hand outstretched. Will you put this in my hand? You don't know me, but can you give me something? So I think a general life of philosophy is like, okay, how can I make a deposit in this relationship before asking for something in return? It's very hard to make a deposit from a bank account that you haven't made, or a withdrawal from a bank account you haven't deposited anything into, right? And so the mindset shift here is realizing that, number one, they don't care about you. They don't care about your event. They don't care how many followers you have. They don't care how many downloads you get on your podcast. They don't care that you love their brand, because that's what every single person says when they reach out, right? What they care about is themselves and how they can accomplish their own objectives as a brand. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen here, and I've in the background while we were talking, I have, and so for those of you who are listening, maybe come over to the YouTube, or I'll try and talk about it verbally as well. But I have pulled up Recess's Instagram page. Okay. Yep. And by the way, if you're listening and you're like, I don't have an Instagram, I'm not on social media, I don't want this. Look, Instagram is a research tool. Okay. This is the brand telling you what they care about by what they're posting. Okay. So we're sitting here, and when did you say this offsite was, or this in-person thing was, Lindsay?
June of this year.
June of this year. Okay. So we're sitting here in January, and you know what we want to figure out now is what campaigns were they running last June or maybe May? Okay. I want to know, what did they care? What types of things were they running last year? Because chances are they're probably going to be running a similar campaign to that this year, right?
Yep.
And so I'm scrolling. They're posting a lot of stuff. Okay, sober October.
We're in October, yeah.
Yeah, so we're in October already. Okay, August, we're almost there. Okay, June. Okay, we're almost there. Okay, Instacart. Okay, so this is June. Okay, here we go. Here's your pitch. Yeah. Ready?
Yes.
I just pulled up an Instagram post that says Wedding Season Survival Kit. There's a giveaway that they were running on June 6th of 2024. They're doing this giveaway where it's the ultimate like recess thing for your wedding. You tag your favorite bride, and there's going to be 10 winners and all this stuff, right? This is the subject line of your pitch, Lindsay. It's, Wedding Season Survival Kit in 2025 ? I saw that you were doing this giveaway, this promotion last June, and this is such a creative idea, a creative thing. I'm actually hosting an in-person event with, I would love to help spread the word about this promo. We can create some content around the drinks at the event. We'll give you the content to repurpose all around this giveaway. We'll give you some reels to help promote this. And guess what? I'll grant you usage rights for 3 months to use it for whatever, a week to use it for paid ads. Happy to share some results of how I've worked with this other brand over here to share, to move the needle. Are you free on Thursday at 10 a.m. to talk about this?
Ooh. Oh, that's Justin. Yes. Okay.
That's the pitch. So the real unlock here, Lindsay, is that this is what they have money for.
Right.
They have money for their own initiatives and their own campaigns. And so your whole goal when you pitch them is helping them understand, like, hey, I know that you probably have like 10K or 15K to like promote this giveaway. If you give me 10 grand of that or 5 grand of that or whatever it is, I'm going to help you move the needle on this campaign. So it's a positioning exercise.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that just blew my mind. Because going back to what you were talking about at the beginning of this, you're like, you're not sure if people will work with you after they read the book because they do all of it. But no, because I still, even after reading the book, it wouldn't have been that good. So I'm like, okay, yes, exactly. So there's proof. There's proof of that.
Well, the other thing too, I hope everyone hears or maybe hopefully sees, is that this didn't take long.
No.
Right? It didn't. It took us a minute? We scrolled back. We looked at and by the way, you use lots of other things other than Instagram. Like, if you might be sitting here thinking, oh, I'm not a consumer facing creator or influencer or business owner. I like more B2B or more niche or something. You can use things like their press releases. You can go on their LinkedIn and see what their VP of marketing is posting about, oh, we just did this promotion with blah, blah, blah. Right. So there's so many breadcrumbs that brands leave on the internet about what's important to them. And so if you're listening and thinking this doesn't apply to me, it absolutely does, regardless of what niche you're in. And so I just hope that a lot of people look at sponsorships or pitching as like this huge thing, like, oh, I don't know what to do. It just feels like this big lift and there's no guarantee they're going to respond. And so I just want to show you how easy it can be. It does not need to be complicated as long as you're making it about them, not you.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And that was just like a simple tweak and just being intentional for like 1 minute, 2 minutes versus like, okay, I'm just going to open this DM and send something random and not hear anything back from them.
Right.
Kind of deal.
Right. Totally.
So good. Okay. I have a lot of women who listen to this who are used to affiliate marketing. Let's chat a little bit about that. Like, what are some pros of that? Because you talked about that in your book, and maybe how can they take that even a step further than what we're used to, where we just get the link and promote it?
Yeah. So I do talk about these 3 pricing models in the book. So obviously, affiliate marketing is like honestly the dream scenario for a lot of brands and companies, because like who wouldn't want to have a huge army of people out there talking about them, beating the drum, and they don't have to give up anything unless there's some sort of sale made. Yeah. Right. And so that's like the dream scenario for most brands. And I think when I think about affiliate marketing, it actually trivializes the effort that's required to generate content containing a promotion.
Right.
Right. Because I think a lot of times like we realize, oh yeah, just like I have an affiliate link, I'll put it in my show notes or my podcast or, my link in bio or whatever. But if you actually want to like make some meaningful income, it can't just be this passive thing. There has to be like some sort of strategy behind you dropping the link and talking about it in like a very overt call to action and so on, right? Yeah. You're not going to ever like be able to pay your bills, or most people are not going to be able to pay your bills or your mortgage with like these passive affiliate links that you don't even talk about, right? And so this is part of the thing that you need to reconcile or realize as a creator, as an affiliate marketer, that like, it's actually a non-trivial thing. Like I'm actually expending social capital by giving this testimonial about this brand, and like whether or not people buy it or not, I have no control over that. Right. And so that's actually not a fair trade. And so what I encourage people to do is like, there's actually a intermediate step between affiliate commission and a flat payment. There's this one in the middle called a hybrid compensation model. And this one I think is a great kind of palatable step for affiliate marketers to take on the pathway to flat payments, where basically there is some sort of upfront base compensation to acknowledge that like, look, it's going to, I got to make some posts, I got to make a video, I got to do these reels, I got to do XYZ. There's an opportunity cost associated with me creating this content containing this promotion for you. If you really want me to, generate this video, so you got to, I got to capture that somehow. Let's say it's $1,000 up front or $1,500 up front, and maybe the affiliate commission was like, let's say 30% recurring, commission on a software tool or something. You could come to them and say, hey, I am willing to. How about we do $1,500 up front and a 15% ongoing commission versus the 30% or something like that. And a lot of brands will be open to that dialogue, especially if you can stretch their minds. So one thing that you can say if you're ever engaging with a brand who's just dead set on affiliate marketing, you could say, hey, thank you so much for telling me about your affiliate program. Awesome. I'm going to go take a look at it. Just out of curiosity, do your affiliates also grant you the rights to repurpose their content for paid advertising? Because that's something that I specialize in. Let me know if you'd like me to send over a few investment options for what that might look like. And so the brand thinks, well, actually, no, we're not getting the usage rights to the content our affiliates are creating. And so maybe we should talk to Lindsay, because it seems like she's doing things a bit differently than we're accustomed to. And so a big part of this is like helping them pivot their mind or kind of open their minds to what could be were they to work with you.
Yeah. So one of the things that I really loved about this was bringing awareness that like us as the people who are the creators of the content aren't the only ones who need educated a lot of times. Like it's that education with the brands as well, especially if it's a brand who isn't working, regularly with creators or they're a newer startup. And I was like, I love taking that approach to it, especially in the communication of, educating back and forth. And I really think that you do a really great job sharing that in the book for people who are not used to doing that. So
I appreciate that. And I want to say one thing about this, which is that I think a lot of people think that brands have it all figured out.
Yeah.
They've got the teams, they've got the agencies, they've got the know-how. Who am I, a little old creator? I don't know anything. Like, who am I to give them advice about, wow, your landing page sucks. Well, don't tell them that. But like, honestly, like I talk in the book about like, look, like it is totally reasonable if they're giving you this link that you need to drive to for you to be like, you know what, I think if I put this in front of my audience, they're going to be confused. They're not going to understand what the offer is. They're not going to, I could share a quick story that'll hammer this home, which is that I was working with a financial services company and I was really excited. I used the tool, so I was really excited about the partnership. And they sent me the link, the landing page that they wanted me to drive to in the newsletter. And I clicked on it and I was like, this is not a good landing page. Like, this is confusing. Yeah. It's not really mentioning the key features that I think are like the most compelling reason that someone would want to use this. And so I basically came to them and I said, look, I'm going to make a video. I'm going to make a video, a screen share of like how I use the tool, because I think that's going to be a more effective way to basically pull people further down the purchase funnel. And their minds were blown. They were like, you'd be willing to do that? They weren't paying me for this, right? But I was like, why wouldn't I offer to do that? Because it's in my best interest to do that, because it's going to increase conversions and then the brand's going to want to continue to work with me, right? And so I think like going the extra mile and understanding like, it's okay for you to say to the brand, like, hey, like, I think we should do it this way instead. I've been doing this a long time and, you know, I can pull on experiences of working with this other brand over here and this worked really well. And a lot of times they'll be like, wow, thank you so much. No one's ever told us that before.
Yeah. Well, and I liked that too in the book when you were talking about like, it's okay not to like charge for every little thing like that. Like, you can go above and beyond a little bit because it's going to create that brand loyalty, which was another thing as I was reading and you were talking about the partnership and that relationship with brands, and not just working with them one time, but working with them repeatedly. And I'm assuming you see that a lot with people as they're working with brands one time and then not getting invited back or whatnot. Can you talk a little bit around that, like what you have seen, and maybe if you have any juicy stories, feel free. Man. I'm sure you have plenty.
I got a lot. So the language that you used there was really interesting to me, because you said they worked with the brand and then they were never invited back to work with them again. Yeah. And this is the mindset that people have, is I need to be invited back to collaborate with them again. Yep. It's on them to come back. Yeah. Like, if it went well, they'll reach out to me, right? Yeah. That seems like the intuition. And the reality is that the reason that they're not reaching out to you could be a lot of different things. Number one, they need some time to analyze the data, the performance of how your campaign went relative to the other people that they worked with too. They just get super busy and there's other priorities internally and they just kind of take their eye off the ball. And the reason that a lot of creators don't get these renewals essentially is because they are terrified of going back to the brand after it ends and saying, hey, how did it go?
Yeah.
Because they're terrified of the answer. They're worried that the brand will be like, oh, thanks for asking. You generated 0 sales. We hate you. Never talk to us again.
Yes.
Right?
Yes,
like, that's what the brand, like, creators are worried that brands are going to do that. And so in reality, a brand is almost never going to say that to you. In more frequently, they'll say either, well, first they'll say, oh, it went awesome. And so great. Now it's time to pitch the next collaboration. They love you. Perfect. Right? So you'd have no hesitation. Right? Or they'll probably say like, well, it just went okay. Right. Well, it was, we were hoping it would get more views or more downloads or more sales or more signups or whatever. And then this is your opportunity to say, okay, look, thank you so much for this information. That's great to hear. I have some suspicions for why I think that might be, but I'm curious, do you have any suspicions? Like, do you have any ideas for why you think that might be? And, man, so surprising. Sometime, like one time this happened and a brand said, oh, you know what? You're right. We actually gave you the wrong talking points. We wanted you to talk about, we've discovered that case studies are better to talk about than this other brief that we gave you. So let's actually do it again and just do the case studies. All it took was asking them and, hey, why do you think that might be? And they were like, oh, yes, sorry. Like, we're moving too fast over here. Let's do this again. Good point. The other thing too is that, like, look, there's this really famous Nelson Mandela quote that I love, which is like, he says, I never lose. I either win or learn. Right. Yeah. So if the brand loves me, great. I'm going to pitch them again, or I'm going to learn something new. I'm going to learn something about my own business. I'm going to learn how I can improve, actually doing an ad read and being more compelling. The other thing too, I think, is that people are really nervous to circle neutral and negative feedback back to brands. Because they think, if I get a DM or an email response or a comment on this sponsored post or something of someone being like, oh, I tried that brand like a year ago, it sucks, I'm never going to use it again. Yeah. People are really worried about giving that feedback to brands, but that feedback is so important and so critical for you to give to brands to allow them to, educate you about, let's say, for example, that you did a partnership and someone in the comments said, oh, I tried it a year ago, it sucked, I'm never going to do it again. You gave that feedback to the brand and they say, oh, well, you know what? We actually completely reformulated our product 2 months ago. It seems like the market is not aware of that. Let's do another iteration of the partnership talking about the reformulation, right? And the brand would have never known that had you not circled that neutral or negative feedback back to them. So there's so much power. This is actually all in step 8 of my sponsorship wheel that I talk about in the book, in the analysis phase of like, how do you put together this kind of like a post-campaign report to not just give them the quantitative data and insights of how it went, but the qualitative stuff as well. Nice.
Yeah, I love that. And I'll be honest, the data piece and the analyzing is like probably my least favorite part, and it's like you said, people are scared to hear that feedback, and not even on us as the creator, but like giving it then to, the brand, because you don't want to offend them and things like that. But you're so right, because you can't learn and you can't grow without hearing all that as well. So both parties, hearing that is awesome. So a lot of the people listening to this probably have never worked with a sponsor before, or maybe they're hearing this and they're like, I have an audience of 350 people, or I have the small size. Can you still find sponsors with a small audience, and what could that look like for your first time?
All right, I'm gonna share an anecdote. So I just moved from California to Minnesota, and I hired a handyman to help me just with some odd jobs in the house. And I just was like making an offhanded comment to him about like how I wanted to get new gutters, or like gutter guards to like make sure that the leaves, don't get in the gutters and freeze and break and all that stuff during the winter. And he's like, oh, okay. Well, I've been living in this area for a really long time. There's one company in particular that you should really talk to because they're the gold standard. They're the best. And I didn't even think twice. I didn't look at Yelp. I didn't do anything. I went and I called that company. They came out, they gave me an estimate. It was like 5 figures. And I was like seriously considering it. I was like, wow, this is, and it was all based on the referral from my handyman. And so you could look at him and be like, that guy's not an influencer. That guy's not a creator, but he is influential. He gave me his own personal testimonial, and he influenced me to then go out and potentially make, buy this 5-figure investment. And so if you carry that same philosophy, that same example over into your business, maybe you'll have local influence. In fact, I have actually several hyper local creators. People have like hyper local newsletters in my coaching program who, I'll give them a shout out. One of them it's called Cincy Scoop, maybe in Cincinnati. So maybe this is up your alley. And so they have built this newsletter and an Instagram following all around what's going on in Cincinnati, and they are crushing it with brand partnerships because, and yes, they're not national. They don't have like a global appeal, but for events that are coming in town, or companies that have franchises in the Cincinnati area, they are so eager to potentially work with Cincy Scoop because they have their finger on the pulse of what's going on in the local community. And so I think that if you, regardless of what size your audience is, there's opportunities for you to collaborate with brands. I have this principle that I talk about in the book called the sponsorship continuum. And so if you are in the beginning of your journey and you have 350 people in your audience or on your list or something, if you were to reach out to a brand and say, hey, let me do like a newsletter integration or something, right? Like 350 people on my newsletter, it's awesome. A lot of brands will look at that and be like, really not going to move the needle for us. A lot of brands, especially if you target some really big companies, right? Right. However, if you change this pitch, if you went and you looked at this brand and you said, you know what, this brand does not have an active blog, and there's these like 10 long tail keywords that I think they should be ranking for, that they're not. What would it look like if I were to reach out to them and be like, hey, I just did this kind of quick analysis of your blog presence, your social presence, and I think you could be telling your brand story in a more compelling way. I would love to create some content for you, brand, on autopilot. I'll give you 10 blog posts a month. I will create maybe some social media content for you. Yeah, it's going to be $7,500 a month. And hey, by the way, go take a look at my newsletter because it's my portfolio. I know what I'm talking about here. So what you pitch has to change based on where you're at in your journey.
Yeah. Yeah. And that really stood out to me in the book as well, specifically when you were talking about pricing and those deliverables and the different packages. And like I said, guys, we don't have time to go into all this today, so you definitely have to grab his book. But that was really, because I had always assumed that people had like the one page with their pricing and like the packages, and this is what you sent out. And so your strategy around really customizing that to the brand and then if they do say no, then coming back and like, well, what about this instead, for their budget? And that was a really big eye opener as well.
Yeah, I'm so thrilled to hear that. And for any people listening who still have the media kit with the pricing page or the place on your website where you can go and click, oh yeah, book an ad, read on my podcast here or newsletter integration or something. I think it's well intentioned, right? Like a lot of people think that feels like the best way to do it because it's seamless. I don't have to get on the phone calls with brands. Like I'm just over here building my own universe. I don't want to deal with this. And hey, if a brand wants to pay me $200 for ad read, great, I'll do it, right? But I sit people down and I say, look, if you could have the humility to get on a 30-minute, 20-minute phone call with a brand, and that meant you were able to go from charging $100 per ad read to $1,000, would you do it? Because this is the chasm. When you establish that rapport with a brand, what happens is that this brand probably didn't just reach out to you. They probably reached out to 10 other bloggers or 10 other course creators, community operators, newsletter operators, whatever. And they're just kicking the tires on everyone. Oh, how much do people charge? Like, is this a good fit? And if you were the one who was like, hey, let's hop on a call. I want to learn more about you. I want to learn more about your business objectives. What's the product roadmap look like? Blah, 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 blah. Even if the numbers, the dollars that you send them is 2 or 3x what the other people are charging that they're talking with, they may just choose to go with you because it seems like it's going to go better. They put the face to the name. Yeah. And remember, they've got a boss or they've got a client, if they're an agency, who they're beholden to, who they want to impress, who they want to not disappoint. And so if it means spending a little bit more money to ensure that their butt is protected, they might do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Which makes total sense because we do the same thing with, different people that we hire, we go to, or, you get different vibes from people too. And you could... and it goes for the side of the creator as well. Maybe you get on the call and they tell you their objectives and you're like, okay, that doesn't mesh with my audience or my values or things like that. Yeah, for sure.
Totally.
So question for you, if you could go back, Justin, to 2010, 2009, when you guys were very first getting started, is there anything you would do differently or what would you tell yourself then?
Oh my gosh, to take contracts a lot more seriously. I mean, there was this one day where April and I, we were watching TV and one of her YouTube videos came on as a broadcast TV commercial.
Oh my gosh.
And it was promoting this clothing brand. And we looked at each other and we were like, that deal where they gave us that like free clothing credit, did we give them broadcast TV rights in exchange for the whatever $2,000 clothing credit or whatever? Right. And so sure enough, looked at the contract. Yep, of course we did, because we didn't think twice. We were like, oh, they're just giving us credit. Like, well, we were inexperienced. We didn't know any lawyers really, like, and so we were just like, it's probably fine. And so we signed it, and then now here they are. They're using my wife's content for ads, and so we had so many stories like that where we just kind of didn't take it seriously enough, didn't really understand what we were agreeing to. And this stuff has serious consequences. In fact, I had a coaching client who early on in her journey agreed to 5 years of exclusivity for a free mattress.
No. Oh, I did read that in the book and I was like,
free mattress, free mattress. So they weren't even paid. Right. And so like what this means, exclusivity means that, if another competitor to that mattress approached her at any point in those 5 years, she couldn't take a deal. Even if they had a giant, we're willing to back up a dump truck full of money onto her driveway, that she couldn't do it because she agreed to this exclusivity. And so this stuff has serious consequences if you're not careful.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's such an important point too, because there's a chapter for everyone listening in the book where he goes into contracts, things like that. And some of the words you were using, I'm like, yep, have no idea where that is. So like mental note, gonna come back to this. But yeah, also finding that lawyer who can be your person to read through some of these things when it's, like you said, that you just don't understand. Like having that self-awareness that like, this is out of my field right now and I'm not sure what I'm signing is really important.
Well, the other thing too is that I think a lot of people are saying, okay, great, I've got a shortcut now. I can just upload the contract into AI, right? And AI is going to like help me. And like, I'll be the first person to acknowledge that like, it can be very useful to help you understand some of the high level kind of deal points that you need to, look at and be careful about and things like that. But I still am a big advocate for like, look, if this is, a significant amount of money on the line, especially if like you live in a part of the country or part of the world where there might be different laws or regulations, hiring a lawyer is a worthwhile thing to do. Look, if you're opening any other kind of business, right? An ice cream shop, whatever, right? There's some costs that you're going to incur before you can sell a single ice cream cone, right? You have to rent the space, you have to hire people, you have to get insurance, you have to get ingredients, machinery, all this stuff, right? What are your costs as a creator, as an online entrepreneur? What are your costs? A phone, a computer, software programs? Not that much. And, maybe hiring a lawyer for an hour or two to, create a contract template for you that, will ensure that you're protected when you enter agreements with these brands.
Yeah. That's such great advice. And that's a great place to pause for today. We could talk about this forever because I would love to just sit here and pick your brain about a lot of this. But I have a couple of questions that I usually ask my guests at the end of the show that kind of have nothing to do with this, but I'm just kind of nosy. Do you have a morning routine, evening routine, neither, both?
I definitely have a morning routine. It's very important to me that first of all, I do CrossFit really early in the morning every day. That's like my thing. And then I come home and I take my kids to school every day. That's like a really important thing to me. Yep. In fact, I was going around, my family and I do this thing every once in a while where we go around and we're all going to say a nice thing about Liam, or my oldest son, this type of thing. And we go around and it's just it's a love fest. It's awesome.
Oh, that's nice.
And so the other day, everyone was saying things to me, and my oldest son said, "My favorite thing about you is that you take us to school every day." Aww. And I was just right, I was tearing up there, and I was like, "What? Why? Tell me more, buddy." And he was like, "Well, you could ask mommy to do it, but I think it's such a nice gesture." He said he's 10 years old. I thought it was such a nice gesture that you do this. And so I specifically am building a business right now where I can maximize those moments, because that lifestyle business is kind of a dirty word, I think, these days. And to me, that's what I'm building. I just want to be there for my family, be there for my kids and my wife. And so my morning routine, it's I'm never sacrificing that.
I love that. Okay. Favorite book you've read recently besides your own? Of course.
Favorite book I've read recently besides my own? Probably The Obvious Choice by Jonathan Goodman. As a friend of mine, he just came out with it, and kind of relevant to what we're talking about today, which is just how do you become the obvious choice in your industry for people to hire or listen to or work with. It's a really, really good book.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to add that to my list because that sounds, like I said, perfect to go with this. Okay, and the last one, again, this is just me being nosy. Your favorite destination you have traveled to, or a place on your bucket list?
Ooh, favorite bucket list. I mean, I have on my bucket list is I want to go to Iceland to see the Northern Lights.
Nice.
The sweet part about living in Minnesota now is they have a nonstop flight. It's 6 hours.
Oh, okay.
Nonstop flight to Iceland. So I'm let's go.
So now you're making it happen.
Now I'm going to make it happen. So I've always wanted to do that. Hopefully soon.
I just read an article this afternoon that said Iceland and the Northern Lights they're supposed to be the best ever this fall of 2025.
Oh my gosh.
So
okay,
there you go.
All right,
there's your sign. Yeah, awesome. All right, Justin, thank you so much. How can everyone connect with you? How can they work with you further? Because I know they're going to be intrigued about this. Tell us all the things.
Yeah. So if you are, if this conversation tingled your brain at all, that was just scratching the surface of what I talk about in the book. And so it's sponsormagnet.com is the best place. And once you go there, you'll stumble down the rabbit hole of my universe and learn about all the other stuff.
Yeah. And I love your weekly email, by the way, the creator with all the information in it and all the, sponsorships coming up and all that. That's really great. So get on his email list as well. Much. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Justin. We appreciate you.
Thanks, Lindsay. This was great.